Hi, and welcome along to the North Lodge Cottage Garden. There are some plants in the garden that never cease to put a smile on your face, and the plant just behind me is one of those. Now I know I'm biased when it comes to David Austin roses, being a super fan and having such a large collection of plants, but this particular rose by David Austin is beautifully simplistic and very, very unfussy. The rose just behind me is Tottering by Gently, so if the name doesn't make you smile alone, the beautiful, simple yellow flowers really should. Introduced in 2018, it is a very, very reliable, very unfussy rose, which is really easy to grow and will reward you with flowers all the way through the year. A single yellow rose with bright golden stamens right in the centre is held above a plant around 4 foot tall and around 4 foot wide. It's really, really lovely to look at. It produces, when it's fully grown, a lovely domed shaped plant. Now the one just behind me has only been in the ground a matter of weeks, although I've had it for quite some time waiting to be planted. I've seen this in several places, and recently at Chelsea, where it was getting an awful lot of attention, and mainly because it obviously, with a rose, they're not the best plants to be planting in the garden if you have pollinators or bees in mind. This beautiful, simple dog rose flower is really attractive to hoverflies and bees and pollinating wasps, so it is a really nice change of gear for the David Austin collections. You have a series of petals, normally 5 or 6, around that lovely central eye of beautiful, deep, rich golden yellow stamens, and you can see that veining to the flower, enticing the pollinator right down into the centre, where they're obviously going to get a nice drink of nectar and plenty of pollen. The petals are actually, as you can see from here, heart-shaped, which is really rather pleasant, giving the whole thing a really, really lovely look. As I say, a bush reaching just over 4 feet and over 4 feet round. So this is a really large specimen plant, somewhere you might want to plant at the back of a border or as a statement piece, maybe in the middle of a lawn. I've got this one on the driveway, paired with some really other strong colours. Just behind it is James L. Austin, and I'm really looking forward to the contrast in not only shape and form, but obviously in the difference in colour. This lovely rich golden yellow paired with that very, very strong cerise pink behind it, I think is going to be really rather pleasant. Tottering by Gently has flowers that are produced normally in large sprays. At the very beginning of the season, they're going to be born individually like this one here, and the smattering of blooms that's on the plants behind me. However, as the season goes on, very much like Kew Gardens and Susan Williams Ellis, that one is not easy to say, is going to produce more and more blooms in larger sprays and clusters, encrusting the entire 4 foot shrub in these wonderful golden flowers, which really are very, very pleasant. The foliage is very, very deeply serrated around the outside. I'm assuming because it's quite closely related to a dog rose, which has this very sort of large tooth effect to the outside of the leaves. A very nice true green leaf, which is very, very soft, paired with a nice yellow, goes really, really well together. Tottering by Gently, although beautiful, and as you can see, even with the stem held in my hand, nodding around in the wind really, really beautifully, which really does make me smile, especially when the bumblebees land on it, because they're obviously quite delicate flowers. They bob around with the bumblebee on them, which really does make me chuckle. But just a word of warning, Tottering by Gently is really quite thorny. The thorns aren't particularly large, I must admit, but they're backward facing and they are very, very sharp. So do watch out for it. I've actually de-thorned this one for the purpose of this morning video to protect my very, very soft and dainty gardener's hands. But just to let you know, Tottering by Gently does have quite a few thorns. They are very, very sharp, and as I say, backward facing, so don't get caught out by it. Even to the point, well, if you do get caught up in this particular rose whilst working, the back of the leaves are actually barbed as well. Again, coming from its heritage from the dog roses. Scent wise, I don't pick up on a great deal from this rose, but my hay fever is pretty bad at the moment. David Austin say this has a light myrrh fragrance, and I'm not going to disagree with that one, but I am going to really suggest that you plant Tottering by Gently along with Kew Gardens and Susan Williams Ellis in your garden for those simplistic roses to bring pollinators into your collection. It is a really nice contrast, as I say, especially with the one behind it, which is James L. Austin. The contrast in bloom shape for me is really, really nice. Now, I'm not saying that I'm bored of the big, blousy, flouncy, bold, OTT roses with hundreds and hundreds of petals and deeply cupped blooms. But this beautiful simplicity of Tottering by Gently is a really, really refreshing change from David Austin, and a real nod towards the market, going towards things that are driven towards pollinators and a much more ethical way of gardening. So as I say, the rose as a general rule not very good for pollinating insects, but Tottering by Gently really is very pleasant. Now towards the back end of the season, Tottering by Gently will actually produce fairly decent hips, and you can see if I turn this bloom round, a nice swelling behind the actual flower itself, meaning that this flower is already pollinated, and if I left this undeadheaded, it would produce a fairly nice hip, which is cracking. So in synopsis, Tottering by Gently, unbelievably tough and healthy, suffers with no disease problems whatsoever. It's not going to get black spot, mold or mildew. The aphids seem to leave it alone. There's very little scent, but it is absolutely beautifully simplistic in its form. Look at it nodding away in the wind, and it is guaranteed to make you smile. So Tottering by Gently is a highly recommended rose from David Austin from myself.